Carolyn Renee Dupont is a professor of American history at Eastern Kentucky University, author of books like Mississippi Praying, Southern White Evangelicals, and the Civil Rights Movement. Her new book is called Distorting Democracy, The Forgotten History of the Electoral College and Why It Matters Today. She's joining me now on the Scott Sands Show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on.
I may be a nerd, but I'm really looking forward to a conversation about the Electoral College.
I love nerds, and I especially love nerds who love to talk about the Electoral College.
So we may get to a point where you and I disagree on the Electoral College. I'm trying to figure out exactly your perspective on this, but let's just start for everybody. And this is going to be another, I think, contentious year where the Electoral College is under scrutiny again, just as it was during Bush v. Gore, going back to like 1824 and that election. But how did the Electoral College come about when our founding fathers were putting together our Constitution?
Yeah, and that's really where this whole thing begins. And, there's a myth out there, this mistaken belief that there's some kind of high-minded ideal behind it, that there's an important political principle that they are trying to enact in creating the Electoral College.
See, I agree with that. I think that there is.
There isn't. And let me tell you how we know that. And I would ask you why you believe that. Because they didn't talk about it that way. They never, in their discussions, said we've got to have an electoral college because of this or that reason. And I will tell you, if you follow their votes and their conversations over the 4 months that they were meeting in Philadelphia, they rejected 5 plans for an electoral college. And for most of that meeting, they were actually planning for Congress to choose the president. And they were so dissatisfied with the idea of Congress choosing the president that they kept talking about how it will open the door for corruption, possibly even foreign influence. But then they kept voting for that method. And in the last 2 weeks of the Constitution, they said, we're at a loss on this. And they threw it to a committee that put together the plan and that's in the Constitution, which, by the way, is not the one we use today. So what is the political principle that you have understood to be behind?
Well, I really think it protects the role of smaller and diverse states by assigning states presidential electors the same way it does representatives of Congress.
Well, so there are many people who believe that, but we'll just jump right to this. So number one,
I may be in over my head and trying to argue this with you. I mean, you're the professor.
It's okay. It's okay. That's what I'm here for. And this rhetoric is out there, and so I don't blame anyone for believing it. But so first off, we don't use the system that the framers created,
which is a problem.
Altered, which is quite a problem. It's been altered beyond recognition, and it had been altered that dramatically by the second decade of the 19th century. And even the men who created it say, look, this is not what we had in mind. So I think that's the first important thing to understand, that if you want the system that the framers designed, that's not what we do. So that's not a good reason to defend it. Now, in terms of what you say about protecting the small states, let me just tell you what happens. If you live in California, you vote for 54 electors. And if your candidate prevails, you have the chance, you have influenced 20% of what is needed to win. 270 electors, you as a Californian have one Californian, because you get 54 electors no matter how many Californians vote. That's 20% of 270. If you live in Wyoming, you get 3 electors. And, it sounds to me like the Electoral College advantages the large states. And in fact, you can win the presidency with only the votes of 12 states right now, and under the Electoral College. And you can't do near that under the national popular vote. So, I think that we're being sold a bill of goods. Oh, it protects the small states. It does not. Um, the other thing I would
But let me
say
interrupt, and
is
we're
that,
talking to Carolyn Renee
yeah, please.
Dupont. The book is Distorting Democracy, The Forgotten History of the Electoral College and Why It Matters Today. Those 12 states, true, you could win enough electoral votes, but those 12 states are pretty diverse. And if we're talking about purely a popular vote, and by the way, our country was not founded as a pure democracy. If you're talking about a popular vote, you really only have to campaign in New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, and with the immigration, the border crisis that we've got today, and the potential for illegals to vote, you're looking at a much bigger problem.
Well, okay, so I would challenge each one of those statements. So the fact that we are a republic has nothing to do with having an electoral college. All 50 states are republics. That is in the Constitution, Article 4. And so, democracy is the character of our government, and that we all have equal power. And in fact, um, Madison and Jefferson talk about equality as a Republican principle, small r. So we are not equal at the ballot box. I think another thing you said, so it is illegal for people who are not citizens to vote in federal elections. And, that is, I don't know any place that's actually happening. And what was the other thing that you said?
I don't know. I ramble a lot, but we're so short on time.
Oh, so
I got to find you on social and slide into your DM so we can continue this conversation as we get closer to the election.
Please do.
Carolyn
do.
Dupont,
I
Distorting Democracy. What's the solution then? What do we do? Because I'm a constitutionalist. I don't believe we need to make drastic changes. But as we look at the way the elections have evolved, when you look at 2000, when you look at 2016, when you look at, Hayes and Jackson, there's obviously the opportunity to do the Electoral College better while maintaining what our founding fathers intended based on the Federalists.
Well, so our founding fathers, let's just be clear that the Electoral College that they created was the best they could come up with at the time. A number of them argued for a direct popular vote, including James Madison. And I think that's what we need to do, because that's the only way that we're all going to have equal power at the ballot box. And that's what we need, is a system where we're all equal.
Carolyn, great to have you on. I'll follow up with you soon, I hope, and thank you for your insight.
Please do. Thanks for this conversation.
Distorting Democracy, The Forgotten History of the Electoral College and Why It Matters Today.